Hi, it's Marie here, and I'm so delighted to be talking to you today. And it is about rising to meet life's challenges. Um, there's never one thing that gives you wisdom and understanding. So there isn't. And I can't believe my camshaft, it actually worked. Yay! That's so exciting. So when Amy and I were talking about talking about what it was that I did, and it's very hard for one sentence, the elevator pitch for me to explain what it is that I do for the people that I work with. And I suppose there's empathy, understanding, a bit of wisdom from the experiences that I've been through. And I suppose that's why I like to support women, because we doubt ourselves, and to have somebody that's been through the experiences that you are going through, and have to come out the other end and to have learned along the way, it can be a huge release, a huge burden released from you. So when I set up a course then pretty much on that whole thing of rising to meet life challenges. And it's not one size fits all. It's very much that whole thing of what I discovered along the way. And this is sort of like it's sort of like a buffet where you can get a taster menu of what it is that what you can find that will actually work for you. So before I forget it, I have a 6 weeks course that's going to be starting on Monday the 10th, and it will be going on, as I said, for 6 weeks. And really it's basically giving you a bit of insight and understanding of what tools and techniques are actually available to you, and the difference that they can actually make in the world and to you. So there's always a place that we have to start, and I do believe that there is always a time in your life where there is a catalyst, where you're say, do you know what, there's more to life than the life I'm leading, and I'm ready to embrace it now, or at least curious about what it is that you, let me let out this fly. Where are you? Where did you go to? I'd like to let you out, wherever you are. So for me, it started about 15 years ago, and it was very much a case of I felt part of me was missing and part of my life, even though I was a wife and a mother, and we had done a lot of traveling, and everything that I had was basically focused on through me and out to my husband and the kids. So it's actually a great place to start. And I think there's one thing that's brought to the fore over the last year. It's highlighted areas in your life maybe that you want to look at, that you want to change, that you want to get more insight and understanding into, whether you're deciding to stay in a relationship, whether you're deciding to leave a relationship, whether you're deciding to change jobs, move house, whatever of these things. There's perception, and then there's reality. And as I've discovered, the two are quite different, so they are. So when I started off this, I wanted some place to start. So for me, I liked the fact of working with energy. So I went investigating that. So I did Reiki, which was great, became a Reiki master, and I said, that's fine, but that's not it. Then went on and studied with angels, integrated energy therapy, and that was great, but that wasn't it. I did other body work, as in reflexology, Indian head massage, Hopi ear candling, things like that, stuff that I could use that were practical, because we are mind, body, and spirit, and you really can't separate one from the other because they all have an impact. As an awful lot of people will have found over the last year, because of the fear, and that they encapsulated that in their body, which also had a knock-on effect on their mind, and then as a result their spirit. So we cannot look at ourselves in isolation. So it was then that I had heard about NLP, and for those of you that don't know what it is, there's a gorgeous lady called Danielle Serpico, and she does specific training on NLP, and it's very much, I did it for myself, as you should do all things, I think. And if you find that you get benefits, then that's when you're in a position to pass on your wisdom and understanding that you've gained from whatever course, that fact that you learned. So always start with doing something for yourself and what it is that will benefit you. And when you benefit, then basically you'll find that you're passing that on to others. So over the 2 years that I was doing that, I found it gave me a new insight into life. I discovered that the part that I felt was missing wasn't in fact missing at all, but it was sorely neglected, and I hadn't actually looked into nurturing that aspect of myself, because a lot of the exercises were visualization and meditation, and I actually found that the neural pathways in my head, particularly on the right side, because I'd never really used that before, and that they were really firing on all cylinders. I could actually feel the heat in my head, with this different way of thinking and a different way of connecting with myself. And when I connected with myself, I realized that there's part of me that is universal. There's part of me that is connected to something that's bigger and more powerful, and there's that I am being guided, but I wouldn't have really seen it up until then, or even aware of it. And even since, there would have been times where I would have felt that I was on my own and feeling the weight of the world. I have on occasion said to myself, when in any universe did I think that it was a good idea to go through a specific set of experiences? I was going, really, when did I ever think that this was a good idea? But you know what? It is in the challenges, and the challenges that we learn to rise to, that we gain the wisdom and insight and understanding. And just because you know what it is to do doesn't mean that you're going to actually do it. But anyhow, so I will just give you a couple of experiences, 2 experiences. One about separation and divorce. And probably an addendum to that is my experiences in going through and dealing with my solicitor. For all those people out there that are solicitors, I do apologise. This was my experience, my personal experience with the language that was used, yes, all of the, anyway, I'll explain that. But so there is perception, and as I said, there is reality. So a conversation, well, I don't know, many years ago, with my husband, who had been stationed abroad and came back. And I had done, as I said, I had done an awful lot of work on myself in the intervening time. And I am so grateful for that time, because it allowed me to learn and expand, to grow, and to get a sense of myself. But I did discover that when we had the conversation about whether we were going to stay together or separate, that out of this experience, I learned several things. One if there is somebody in a relationship with you and they don't want to stay, to let them go. It is not your job to fight for them to stay. You cannot, it's not your responsibility. And if they feel the urge to go, then you need to give them permission to do that. What it does do is it gives you an opportunity that you may not have to rediscover you as the person that you were meant to be. So that was one thing that I learned from it. And the other thing was that even though he had been stationed abroad for a few years, that when we actually physically decided to separate, that it was totally different. It was as if my supports and my props, because we had been together 25 years, that they were all pulled away all at once, and the carpet was pulled out and the foundations, as we say, the rug was pulled out from under you. So my sense of self and foundations that had basically become melded and connected and meshed over the years were suddenly being separated. And that is challenging, because number one, the first thing you do is you panic, and it's like, what is it that I'm going to do next? Where is it that I'm going to go? And I had a friend, Mary, and she was absolutely fabulous, and I rang her because she had studied law. Her thing wasn't family law, but she had studied, and really she was just such a calm oasis and a sense of touching something that was solid. And I suppose when I feel like I'm working with women that are going through these situations, this is part of what it is that I bring to it, that feeling of panic, that feeling of fear, that whole thing of that you're floundering around. And she gave me wonderful advice about just taking a breath, and that I didn't need to panic, that everything would be fine, and that I would get through it step by step. And I did all of those, but there was a sense of shock that you feel not only in your mind and your body, that did leave me floundering. I was suddenly in a situation where I was a single mum with 3 children. And, I'm not unique in what it is that I've gone through. There's an awful lot of women that have found that they are looking after their family by themselves. And it was interesting because because we traveled quite a bit, there was the expectation now that that I had to work, that I had to support my family, that what I was being supported with wouldn't be enough to maintain a household. So, and then I also found that I was the sole energetic support for my 3 children. And when you are floundering for yourself, you are conscious of the children. My dad would have always been the mainstay in my life, as in he was my advocate. He flew the flag and he just thought I was great. So it's always lovely to have somebody like that in your life. But he had died the year before, but I had great experiences growing up with him as my dad. And then I found myself falling into the role of both mother and father. And you do this for a while because you don't want your children to move out, so you do want to compensate. You do want to compensate for and play both mother and father. You cannot make your children and your husband connect. That has to be their journey. I would have had an idea of what it is that I wanted for them and the relationship they wanted with their dad, because it was amicable. But you cannot, that's the other thing, you cannot force something on somebody that they're not ready to, that they were willing to. You can only you cannot put your will on what it is that you would like. So you do have to, at a certain stage, take a step back and let their dad and the children connect together. So that was interesting, and for a few years I wanted to heal the kids. So because I'm a big believer in holistic, I was bringing them for therapies and just to make sure that they were all right and to help them process, because we do process in mind and body and spirit. And then it reached a stage where I needed to take a step back. I realised what in fact that I was doing, and that it was really detrimental to me, because I couldn't physically fill two roles, and that I was mum, and to fulfill just that role. There is such a thing as we call energetic support, and that's basically where you maintain the energy in a house, and a lot of mothers do this instinctively, and in doing that you're not controlling the children and their and what it is that they're going through, but you're supporting them through it, because you can't do it for them. And that's the other lesson that I learned. I would love to have had a magic wand and said make that better, but the reality was that I wasn't their journey, I wasn't their experiences, and they had to find their own way, and I could support them in doing that. So that was also, as a mum, I think it's probably one of the hardest things, is to take a step back and let your children lead their own lives, that you can give them advice and support. And you may not agree with what it is that they're saying, or what it is that they're doing, and I've had this conversation with my kids, and because they expect me to feel the same way as they do. And I said, but that's not, I know where it is that you're coming from, but we are not going to agree on everything, nor are we meant to. So lots of learnings from that point of view. Letting go, finding your sense of self, the fact that you've got to step up and provide a livelihood, and that there is just you become a team, you and your children together, and the fact that you have no control over what it is, the sort of relationship they have with their dad. Now, I firmly believe in the power of women, and I would have joined probably 2014, so probably about 4 years after I had separated, I joined Network Ireland. And out of my experiences with the NLP, I had created the CD for children. Called You Have the Power. And I wanted to promote it. They're basically stories told as fairy stories. Each story has some empowering techniques that I bring in, about viewing the world, about dealing with bullies, about I am an affinity with Archangel Michael, and I have him coming in. And so all the stuff that it took me a lifetime to learn, I put it in the CD so that the kids could learn for themselves, because the sooner that they learn that life isn't personal, they're just some things that you go through, the better. And I did that in the CD. So when I joined the network, it was partly to promote that, but I felt hugely empowered with the association of the women that I met. They were hugely powerful and successful women that were learning, that were standing in their own power and talking with confidence about themselves and their ability and their businesses. And I loved that, because my background was nursing, so I wasn't used to singing my own praises, nor was I used to talking about myself and what it is that I do gotten an awful lot better about it, mainly because I do believe that in sharing my experiences that I can help others in going through theirs. And in my experiences that I found that that's my path, that's my calling. And the more women that to gain confidence in developing their self-esteem, the better. It benefits us all. So I had joined the network, and I enjoyed it so much. And because I also enjoy giving back, I became Network Dublin president. It was probably the best year that I had had. As I was network president, I had met great speakers, amazing women, got to see wonderful venues. I managed to move house twice during that time, and divorce. So it was. Oh no, I didn't divorce that year, but yes. So there was actually a great sense of. No, what I had so I had sold my house and moved twice in that year. So that was a big year, 2017, as well as network president. And I had always this thing that I wanted to move to the country. So I fulfilled my wish that year. Like all things, when you're in alignment, I wanted to move down. I wasn't sure what part of the country I wanted to move to, but I was down visiting my brother. Because he had just bought a place, and he said, come and see it and see what you think. And it was an old cottage, so it wasn't really what it is that I wanted. But funnily enough, the house down the road from them was absolutely gorgeous. And I looked at it and I said, oh my God, that looks gorgeous. It was a dormer bungalow. I said, I love it. I love where it's situated. I love the space around it. I love the fact that I can breathe. And it was a vacant, and it fell into my lap. And you find things like that when you are in alignment. When you let go of something in your life, you actually create space for something new. So it was coming up time then to divorce, and I used the same solicitor that I had used for my house. And even though the divorce was amicable, I had gone to her literally just for advice, but I found myself being sucked in. So I did, and that's the only way that I describe it. She used, because I specifically wanted a buffer. I didn't particularly want to be dealing one-to-one, because I had been through the whole moving house thing, and I found that you're better off concentrating on one big thing, but then you also need to recover from that. So I found then that she was using my fear about going through the process and the fact of dealing with the law, and that for me it felt like a foreign language. I found the language particularly aggressive. And I really didn't like the language that was used. And I didn't like the language that she used. And it was so passive aggressive that something that was amicable, I found in very quick time, was turning into something personal and aggressive. And then before I knew it, I was down the rabbit hole. And we both had solicitors, and it was almost developing tit for tat, and I saw how quickly things can escalate if you're not careful, and when you hand over your power to a certain extent. So I felt I wasn't heard, I wasn't being seen, stuff was not being put in time. She would say one thing, and when we would meet face to face, it would be very agreeable, and I would say she's definitely empathic and understanding. But as soon as the distance was, the calls were ignored. She used money as a, well, you need to pay me now or else you won't. So I found myself in a situation where I felt I was being bullied, I wasn't being seen, I wasn't being heard. And it was a particularly painful time. So something that was actually supposedly straightforward was not. I had never been through an experience like that before, nor had I been on the personal end of that sort of behaviour before. So for me, it was a shock to the system. And when I go into shock, basically, I shut down. So in the end, what I did was, because I felt that she was not listening to me or nor hearing what it was that I was saying. So I got onto the Law Society, and I felt I learned she was a huge learning lesson for me. I learned about forgiveness, about letting go, about the fact that just because she's a woman, that she wasn't necessarily the best person for me, that I wanted her to acknowledge what it was, that she recognized what it is that she was doing to me. And I can honestly say she didn't, nor did she want to. And for me, I learned I needed to let that go. I didn't need to be carrying that on my life. I didn't need to be going around saying, "Oh, she never did," I didn't need to carry that burden. So I did. I got somebody else in to work with her, managed to limp over the end, and then drew a line on the sand, and I said, I forgive her, I let her go. I did realise I did have enough insight and understanding to know that she wasn't coping very well. She was working on her own. She probably had taken on too much. She had her own personal stuff that she was going through. And I needed to recognise that I didn't need to be taking on her stuff as well. So that was, as those two incidents alone. There are other things that have happened in my life, but I won't go into them now because you don't need to know them. But those experiences allowed me to learn. And I think that's why, when I support other women that are going through this, their perspective will be different, because I will know how to help them to deal with fear. I'll know how to help them to gain their self-confidence. Having somebody that is on your side, that is cheering you on, is a huge, huge positive, empowering, and uplifting experience, and it can change your experiences. I totally believe in the power of women. I do believe that despite my experiences, that women, when they're in alignment with who they are absolutely amazing. We have really only started coming into our power in the last 100 years, and probably properly in the last 50. A lot of us don't have generationally women who were leaders or were successful in business or things like that. And for thousands of years, we've had the male model of the world. And this is just a statement of fact. This is not saying, oh, men are better than women or women are better than men. That's nothing about this at all. But it's about the male model was the way the world was won. It was, we all know it, and we can hear it in the leaders. It's like my way or the highway, or you're either with me or against me, or it's not make love, it's make war, and it's all very confrontational. And if we're going to survive as a species, we need the balance of men and women, and that's why I really, really feel in the power of women, that in doing and in rediscovering and connecting who they are a huge power and a light in the world that will make a difference, not only to themselves, to their families, and then knock on to their businesses, their community, and their countries. And I love the fact that we're in Ireland. I really, really do. I love the fact of the blood that flows through our veins, the experiences that we've been through. And I really feel that in particular that we're a really powerful bunch. I probably have seen more women entrepreneurs in the last 10 or 15 years standing up, doing business their way, working around their families. And if another thing was been learned over the last year as well, is that we're learning to do business differently, and it will have a knock-on effect on the families, and it will allow collaboration between the husbands and wives in supporting each other, so that we women need to let men to step up so that they can fulfill their roles as men, and we women to step into the power of womanhood and what that is. And as I said, that's all about empathy and understanding, collaboration and support. They're only just a few minute ways of problem solving, of coming together, of seeing things, being the ability to take a step back, to take the personal hurts out of things so that you can actually make an informed decision. And that is a hugely powerful place to come from. So while generationally that we may not have that experience, and I think that's why a lot of women suffer from imposter syndrome, it's because generations before us, we don't have those memories that come along. I don't know whether you're aware of that whole thing about the cellular memory, where your grandmother had your mother in the womb as a baby, and your mother in her womb had all the eggs that she was going to ever have in a lifetime, and one of those eggs is you. So it's not surprising that you find that there's family dynamics that actually carry down through, and that your grandmother's experiences can have effect on your mother and also have an effect on you. Everything that we overcome in this lifetime, we're doing it not only for ourselves, but we're doing it for the generations that have gone before us that didn't have, nor were in a position in which that they had these tools that they could actually use. And we are so lucky to be in this time and taking away from everything that's happened, because it is a time where if you're going to, as a humanity, if you're going to wake up, you need a shock. And that's certainly what's actually happened. And then after that, you have to be in alignment with yourself. You have to listen. You have to listen and to understand the bigger picture and how it relates to you, and how it is that you can use that to evolve and to grow. So very much a time for rising to meet life's challenges. We've already seen that we can work differently. And it's how we can utilize the experience that we've had over the last while and jumpstart our world, because we need the women out there to be jumpstarting their world. I hope that in sharing some of my experiences, the insight and the understanding and the empathy that I got from going through the realizations, because in the realizations, when you go through something, you have a duty of care to pass them on, what worked and what didn't work for you. I deal with thoughts, feelings and emotions, and I know the highs, I know the lows, I know the fear, I know what it feels like, I know how it is to shift it, I know what it is to let it go. As there's a friend of mine that says, and every new level has a new devil. And I know what that's like. So it's really, really, it's a really, really interesting time. And it is something that in the long run, that there are elements that we can pick out that we can be grateful for. And also the whole thing is that we have a journey that in life that we come here to do. And we can only look after ourselves to the best of our abilities to tap into that spark that's in us, because in that enlightenment, when we light up, we give permission to our children to do the same, to our families to do the same. And there's a huge amount of empowerment and healing and evolution in the process. So I'm so delighted that I got this opportunity to talk to you, just to share some of my experiences. And I'm really looking forward to connecting with you and working with you in the future. Remember, ladies, it's your time to sparkle and shine. Bye.